Opposition leaders in Russia are blaming the Kremlin for the assassination of Boris Nemtsov. A vocal critic of President Vladimir Putin, the prominent politician was murdered just hours after calling for a march against Russian aggression in Ukraine. Putin is condemning the murder, but as Jacques Barbeau reports, his wasn't the only dissenting voice to be silenced over the past decade, and we warn you, some of the video in this story is disturbing.
It was a brazen political assassination within sight of the Kremlin. Boris Nemtsov, a fierce critic of President Vladimir Putin, gunned down late Friday night. A car pulled over and several shots were fired, says this police spokeswoman. All necessary measures are being taken to identify the culprits. But Nemtsov's supporters believe they know who killed him. The first people we thought were guilty of the killing were the authorities, says this Moscow resident. Nemtsov did not hide his contempt for the Putin regime. He was planning to lead a rally tomorrow against Russia's actions in Ukraine. Just a few hours before his death, he gave this radio interview. When power is concentrated in the hands of one person, he said, this will lead to an absolute catastrophe. Flowers now cover the spot where Nemtsov was murdered. His colleagues are angry.
That's absolutely beyond imagination, and we see more and more extreme expressions against liberal Democrats, against us.
Around the world, leaders mourn Nemtsov's death. In a statement, Prime Minister Stephen Harper said, in this shameful act of violence, the Russian people have lost an important voice. Harper also calling for a swift, transparent, and independent investigation. In Ukraine, Nemtsov was seen as a friend who paid with his life for seeking the truth. Boris was going to provide evidence of Russian participation in the Ukraine war, said President Petro Poroshenko. Somebody was afraid of this. Vladimir Putin is taking personal control of the investigation into Nemtsov's death. His leading theory, this was a provocation against the Russian state. It's a big political provocation against the country, says a Russian lawmaker. The time and place in front of the Kremlin were chosen on purpose. A few years ago, Nemtsov attended a rally for a murdered Russian journalist. He made it clear people like her, and now him, are targets.
Russian power is an enemy of freedom of press and enemy of opposition, enemy of independent persons.
Jacques Barbeau, Global News.